When people think of horror movies, they tend to go towards the big dogs. Freddy Krueger, Ghostface, Michael Myers, or even Jason Voorhees. And the other thing that comes up is violence, and just gore in general. Since the early 2000s, horror movies became more about gore and violence than being scary or horrific. Obviously, it kicked off with the torture porn movies, Saw, Hostel, High Tension, just to name but a few. What if I told you that some of the scariest horror movies ever made barely have any gore in them? So today I thought we could look at 5 horror movies that don't have any buckets of blood, no graphic kills, and to be honest with you, these movies tend to be some of the best in the genre. So let's get into it. Paranormal Activity. Let's start with one that completely changed modern horror and the one that is the most successful movie ever made. Any genre, which is insane. Paranormal Activity has next to no gore. It does have the bite mark on Kate, but no bloodshed. But this movie somehow manages to be absolutely nerve-shredding scary, and just a great time at the movies. The genius of this movie though is how nothing happening becomes the scariest thing imaginable. And that is always the greatest feat in a horror movie. Long static shots, doors moving slightly, footsteps when no one's there. You're constantly staring at the screen waiting for something to happen. And that anticipation is the real horror. It feels real, raw, and uncomfortable, like you're watching footage you're not supposed to be seeing. For me, the sound design is the star of this movie 100%. Every single thing that you hear, the rustling of carpets, the doors slowly moving and creaking, the footsteps on the hardwood floor, it's pitch perfect. Minimal effects, maximum tension, and that's what makes Paranormal Activity a great horror movie. Insidious. Next up is Insidious, which proves that gore isn't required when your horror imagery is just this strong. Like Paranormal Activity, the film does lean heavily on sound design, sudden visual reveals, and one of the most unsettling uses of silence in any horror. The further is genuinely creepy as well, without needing to be graphic. It's literally just a void. An open space, drenched in black, with a whitish blue fog, that's it. And who can forget one of the greatest jump scares ever put to screen? Seeing the lipstick-faced demon behind Patrick Wilson is a moment that will go down in movie history, but it still gets people years later, and that is one of the brilliance of Insidious. It's also a great example of jump scares done right. Not cheap, but carefully timed and well earned. Again, no blood, no gore. That's why I love Insidious. The Changeling. With The Changeling, if you want to watch a movie that is a masterclass in slow burn supernatural horror, The Changeling is for you. This is one of George C. Scott's best roles ever, and he's got a ton of those. But The Changeling is quiet, patient, but deeply unsettling. There's almost no violence at all, yet the atmosphere is thick with grief, mystery and misery, and dread. And you can feel it in your bones as you watch it. A running theme in these movies is the sound design, and The Changeling has some of the best ever done. The sound of the bouncing ball, the sound of the wheelchair moving along the wooden floors. These scenes grab you by the head and never let you go. But for this movie, one sequence makes it one of the best ever and puts it in the echelon of being, maybe this can be one of the top 5 supernatural horror movies ever made. And that is the seance scene. Everything about this sequence is just a masterclass in horror filmmaking. The slow, low hum of the music which builds slowly, the sound of the pencil on paper as she draws the words, mixed with shots of the doors opening and the close-ups of the actors, then it just stops. It builds fear through suggestion rather than spectacle, making you imagine horror far worse than anything it could show you on screen. And that is one of the greatest things about this movie. If you love subtle, intelligent horror, this one is essential viewing. The Conjuring. This list has James Wan twice, and to be honest with you, that is because James Wan is at the top of his game when it's about pure horror. Not bloodbaths, as if you watch the first Saw movie back as well, it has little to no blood. But for pure haunted house, paranormal horror, James Wan is the GOAT. The Conjuring relies on little to no blood or violence. You see it now and again when you see, the girls being ripped across the screen, held by her hair and all this kind of stuff. And you see it when the sheriff gets his cheek bit. But that's about it for that sort of stuff. But with this though, this movie is packed with terrifying moments that live rent-free in your head forever. The series has dwindled in my opinion though, as it gets to the third and fourth movies, but the first two, some of the greatest haunted house movies ever put on screen. They are just so good. And even though it's technically not a Christmas movie, I watch The Conjuring 2 at Christmas because, well, there's a little bit where they're like, oh, it's Christmas time, look at this. That sort of thing. But for myself, the sequences that stand out, the clapping game. When I first watched this in a packed cinema, my god, I have never seen anyone jump that high out of their seats along with me. I was one of them and it was just pure brilliance. Absolutely incredible. When, do you want to play hide and clap? And then suddenly, right next, I'm getting like goosebumps now thinking of it because of how good it actually is. But then you also have the wardrobe scene. Putting your little sister back to bed to have her waking up and pointing behind you to show that a horrible witch woman is above you. That's nightmare fuel. But then there is the rest of the movie and how it's filmed in general. The slow camera movements that make you feel like something is always watching you. When you're moving through the hallways. Classic. Absolutely brilliant. What really sells it as well though is the old school haunted house vibe. It's classic horror, but modernized without losing its soul. It's just absolutely incredible. And you can always see why it is the biggest horror franchise of all time. Even Annabelle, the three of them. The Nun, they had some great jump scares which sadly were ruined in the marketing. But that's how you get people into cinemas this day and age with TikTok trends and all this kind of nonsense. But it's also proof that restraint can be scarier than excess when it comes to a haunted house movie. The Exorcist 3. Now, a lot of you know how I feel about The Exorcist 3. It's one of my favorite movies ever made, and it's also one of the most underrated horror films of all time. The Exorcist 3 is terrifying, not because of gore, but because of dialogue, performances, and just pure psychological menace. To start with, again, you have the awesome and phenomenal acting from George C. Scott. You got the returning Jason Miller from the first movie, but the standout star? The actor who should have been nominated for more roles than anyone at the Oscars, especially this role? Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif in this movie, he delivers a few monologues that are genuinely chilling and absolutely terrifying. He's just sat there, straight jacket and all, and he's giving an Oscar-worthy performance. You just cannot take your eyes off of this guy. He's that good. You also have the atmosphere as well, which makes you feel constantly oppressive, but the calm before the storm, so to speak. And to make the movie even more of a standout, you do have the hospital corridor scene. You know the one I'm talking about. The one where there's no blood, there's no build-up music, there's absolutely nothing, just a perfectly executed moment of terror that still shocks audiences decades later. To me, this is the single greatest jump scare ever put to film. There is no jump scare that can beat this scene. It's just perfect. From the get-go, moving all your way up until the final bell. Pure genius. And this is why when you see that with this one, along with the first one, William Peter Blatty understands that true horror comes from what's implied, not what's shown. So those are just some of the horror movies with little to no gore, folks. Films that prove you don't need extreme violence to be absolutely terrified. But if you prefer horror that messes with your head instead of your stomach, this list is most likely for you. Let me know in the comments as well, guys. What's the scariest non-gory horror movie you've ever seen? And if you enjoyed this list, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, because more horror is coming your way. Sleep well.